The second type is pollination by water. Means by water the pollen grains that is transferred to the stigma of the flower. Pollination by water is quite very rare. Only around 30 genera, mainly monocotyledon plants, they use the water for the transport of the pollen grains. Then water is the regular mode of transport for the male gametes among the lower plant groups such as algae and bryophytes and the pteridophytes. So in these groups, algae, pteridophytes and bryophytes, we can see the water as a mode of transport for the male transport of the male gametes. But particularly for some bryophytes and the pteridophytes, the distribution is limited because they need the water for the transport of the gametes. The bryophytes and pteridophytes, they have the limited distribution on earth, right? So that is because of they need water for the transportation of the male gamete. But some examples of water pollinated plants like angiosperms, vallisneria and hydrilla, which grow in freshwater, and several marine sea grasses such as Zostera. So here Vallisneria and Hydrilla, which grow in freshwater and which use the water for its pollination, and the Zostera, that is the sea grass that grow in marine water. So not all the aquatic plant, important one, not all the aquatic plants, means the plants which are growing in the water, they do not use the water for their pollination. For example, water hyacinth and water lily. So these two plants, they grow in water, but they do not use the water for their pollination. They use some other methods like wind, or mainly they use the some insects for the transport of the pollen grains. Then the flowers, so in these plants the flower emerges above the level of water and pollinated by the winds insects, right? And in Vallisneria, the female flowers reach the surface of water by long stalk, and the male flowers or the pollen grains are released onto the surface of the water. So in the Vallisneria, so in Vallisneria, the pollination that is by the water, right? So the female flowers, you can see that just this is the water level. The female flowers which reach the surface of the water through a long stalk, right? So this is the long stalk, and you can see the female flower that reached the surface of the water, and the pollen grains that is also released on the surface of the water. Pollen grains also released onto the surface of the water, and that is transported to the stigma of the female flower. Then they are carried passively by water current, and some of them eventually reach the female flowers of the stigma. So these pollen grains carried by the water current, and that reaches the stigma of the female flower. Then in the another group of plants, water pollinated plants such as sea grasses, female flowers remain submerged in water and the pollen grains are released inside the water. See, there is one more type of plants where the female flower is submerged. Means female flower is that is present inside the water. Just imagine the female flower is that is inside the water, and the pollen grains that is transported to the stigma of the submerged female flower stigma, right? So inside, the pollen grains are released inside the water. So in this type, the pollen grains in this species, they are long and ribbon like, and they are carried passively inside the water, and some reach the stigma and achieve the pollination. In most of the water pollinated species, pollen grains are protected from wetting by mucilaginous cover. So the pollen grains, they are having some protective cover to prevent, which prevent the wetting of the pollen grains.